There they were, on safari. The group was out of the jeep to look at the antelopes. Seemingly out of nowhere, a lion came by, intent on making that antelope their dinner, and in the process knocking over several of the participants who were partially mauled in the melee, taking months to recover and being left with lifelong scars, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Crikey! Now, if they'd only had Jeffrey with them. You see, Jeffrey has ADHD, also known as Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. What most people don't know is there's an alternate theory that it's not a lack of attention, but actually an abundance. So while in modern day society, it may look like they're having trouble concentrating on the one task at hand, back in the times of more natural danger, they would be the one in the group noticing the lion creeping in 100 yards away and hearing the leaves crunch and the bushes rustling. And they would be able to alert their group. In this case, he would have been able to notice what was going on and get the group back in their jeeps and safely home. Fellow Toastmasters, on behalf of special brains everywhere, I am so grateful to accept this award tonight, bestowed on us from the Universal Heavenly Genetic and Parental Organization, which has graciously given us this unique ability to see what others do not. The Universal Heavenly Genetic and Parental Organization, also known as UGPO, has given us many things in this world. It can contribute to the various eye colors that we experience in this world, the many different colors of hair that exist, our varying heights, those of us who need not a stool to reach the high cabinet, and those of us who can fit easily in an airplane seat. Variety is the spice of life, isn't it? It can contribute to our personalities, and in this case, the way our brains operate. Many of us have believed that attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a deficit, as is seen in the name. But as I'd like to share in my accepting this award on behalf of all of us who experience this, there are so many benefits. If you know someone with ADHD, you may know that they tend to be perhaps the entertainment of the group, more humorous. In accepting this award, I'd like to thank my father, who has always had a very active mind. Some might say overactive, but very busy, always thinking of options to save people money and always thinking of things that are going on. Just today, he gave a great example of how ADHD can manifest, because he called me telling me he had something to update me on. Now, the contents of what he updated me took about a minute and a half in total, but his conversation with me was 24 minutes long. Now, as lovely as it is to get any chance to speak with him, it does illustrate the point that he wandered and meandered in various directions, and some stories were entertaining, some were educational, but I got to hear about many things. And at some point he paused and said, "Okay, so what else did you need?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, you called me." But by that time he had forgotten who had called who, because the mind had gone on many tangents throughout. I'd also like to thank our modern day public school system, because as they have reduced the amount of time given for recess, many children who, as Nacho Libre would say, they have their wiggles, are not given the chance to release those wiggles. They are given the chance to sit in their desks and be still and focus on one thing, which isn't really conducive to their brains necessarily. So some of the benefits that come from ADHD could be things like hyperfocusing, where you get involved in a task and time flies by and you don't even notice. I myself have experienced this when I used to dabble in photo editing. The whole night would go by and it felt like 5 minutes to me. Much like Jeffrey would have saved that group from the lions, I myself have had a similar experience. There was a theater conference happening away from school, and this theater must have held a few thousand people. It was one of the largest ones I've seen. And I remember hearing a faint beeping in the distance. And I kind of looked around to see what was going on and what I could discern. And most people were just watching the show, kind of like, might as well have been drooling. All they saw was the show. And I knew that as I turned my head like E.T., there would be one person in our group who would also have his ears perked up. That was Jeffrey. He, too, was trying to identify the source of the sound. Now, any time in the past would be closer to 9/11, and so at various times in our history, we may have been on higher alert for things like various dangers like bombs, etc. And most of these people their awareness did not even process that this was going on. But those of us with ADHD tend to notice those other things that are not noticed by others. So it is my sincere hope that if you yourself have not been blessed with ADHD, that you may be lucky enough to have a few people in your life with ADHD so that we all may be safer because of them. So thank you, UGPO, for this wonderful gift of ADHD. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Larysa, for the very interesting speech and very entertaining as well. I would now like to move to the next portion of our meeting, which would be the table topics. So we have our table topics master, Jessica, that is all ready to entertain us as well.